You do not need to come tonight. Mother feels you simply do not fit in. That was the text message my husband William sent me at 6 o'clock in the evening on the night of his mother's Diamond Jubilee birthday party. I stood there frozen in the dressing room of our Mayfair penthouse. Outside the rain was lashing against the glass, but inside I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. I was wearing a bespoke silk gown from Savile Row that cost £5,000. I had spent 6 months planning this event. I had hired a castle in the Cotswolds. I had flown in caviar from Paris and vintage wine from Bordeaux. The total bill came to £80,000. And who paid for it? I did. Every single penny came from my bank account. But now that the cheques had cleared and the guests were arriving, William and his mother Margaret decided they did not need me anymore. To them I was just the common girl from North London, useful for my wallet, but embarrassing to their aristocratic friends. I heard William laughing on the phone earlier, telling his mother that he would make an excuse. He said he would tell everyone I was ill, so he could flirt with the Earl's daughter without his peasant wife standing in the way. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. William thought I would cry. He thought I would stay home and weep into my pillow like a good, obedient wife. He relied on my British politeness. He relied on my stiff upper lip. Oh, William, you have made a grave calculation error. You forgot that I did not marry into money. I made the money. And tonight, I am not just going to cancel a party. I am going to dismantle your entire life, piece by piece, while you watch. I picked up my phone, but not to call him. I dialed my private banker. I am about to execute the most brutal financial revenge in London history. If you want to see exactly how I destroyed a family of leeches in less than 1 hour, comment the number 1 right now. Trust me, you do not want to miss the look on their faces when the music stops. Because revenge is a dish best served ice cold. To truly understand the magnitude of tonight's execution, you must first understand the victims, the Winchesters. If you saw their family estate in the Cotswolds, you would think you were looking at a postcard of the British dream. A honey-coloured stone manor house nestled among rolling green hills, ancient oak trees lining the driveway, portraits of stern-looking ancestors hanging in the hallway. It screams old money. It screams heritage. But the truth is far less romantic. That house is a crumbling pile of debt held together by pride and my bank transfers. When I married William 5 years ago, I thought I was marrying a prince. He was charming. He had that perfect posh accent that made my name sound like poetry. He told me his family had owned land since the 16th century. What he forgot to mention was that by the 21st century they had sold off everything except the house and their arrogance. I remember the first time I had afternoon tea with my mother-in-law Margaret. We were sitting in the drawing room. The air smelled of lavender and damp dog. I was nervous. I was a self-made woman from a council estate in North London, running a successful interior design firm. I was used to construction sites and boardroom negotiations. I was not used to the suffocating rules of the aristocracy. I picked up my teacup. It was delicate bone china, painted with tiny violets. Just as I raised it to my lips, Margaret cleared her throat. It was a small sound, but it cut through the room like a gunshot. She smiled a tight, thin smile that did not reach her eyes. "Oh, Eleanor dear," she said softly, "one does not hook one's finger through the handle like a labourer. It is a teacup, not a mug of builder's brew. Do try to remember where you are." My face burned. I put the cup down. William was sitting right there reading his Horse and Hound magazine. He did not look up. He did not defend me. He just chuckled and said, "She is learning, Mother. Give her time." I should have left then. I should have walked out the door and driven my Audi back to London. But I didn't. I wanted to belong. I wanted to prove that I was good enough, so I worked harder. For the last 5 years, I have been the invisible engine keeping the Winchester lifestyle running. The roof repairs that cost £12,000, I paid for them. The membership fees for William's exclusive golf club in Surrey, I paid for them. Margaret's endless collection of silk scarves and her trips to the spa in Bath. My company paid for it all. And then came the Diamond Jubilee, Margaret's 60th birthday. It must be spectacular, Eleanor, she told me 3 months ago, over a dinner I had paid for. I want a marquee in the Rose Garden. I want the string quartet from the Royal College of Music. And for heaven's sake, make sure the champagne is vintage Bollinger. The guests include Lady Davenport and the local MP. We cannot serve them supermarket swill. She gave the orders. I wrote the cheques. While William played tennis and Margaret napped in the afternoon, I was in my office in London working 18-hour days. I missed my own best friend's engagement party because I had to fly to Milan to secure a contract to pay for their extravagances. I stood in dusty warehouses, arguing with suppliers. I stared at spreadsheets until my eyes blurred. I did it all so they could pretend they were still wealthy, so they could maintain the illusion of being the lords of the manor. I built them a castle on sand. I reinforced every pillar with my sweat and my money. I thought that if I gave enough, eventually they would respect me. I thought that if I polished the family silver bright enough, they would finally see my reflection in it. But I was wrong. They didn't see a partner. They didn't even see a person. They saw a servant who paid for the privilege of serving them. And tonight, with one text message, the illusion has finally shattered. You do not need to come tonight. Mother feels you simply do not fit in. I looked at the invoice on my desk. £80,000 for a party I am banned from attending. The irony is almost beautiful. They want to celebrate 60 years of Margaret's life with my money, but without my presence. They want the castle, but they don't want the architect. Well, William. Well, Margaret. You are about to learn a very painful lesson about structural integrity. Because when you remove the foundation, the whole house comes crashing down. And tonight, I am pulling out the foundation. Let us rewind the clock exactly 24 hours, to the moment the blindfold was finally ripped from my eyes. It was yesterday afternoon. I had come home early from the office to surprise William with his birthday gift, a vintage Patek Philippe watch that had taken me 6 months to source. The penthouse was quiet, too quiet. I walked across the marble hallway towards the study. The door was slightly ajar. I reached out to push it open, but then I heard a voice that made my blood run cold. It was Margaret. She was on speakerphone, and her voice was sharp and piercing, cutting through the heavy oak door. Has the money for the marquee cleared yet, William? The event planner is threatening to pull the staff if the final balance is not in by 5 o'clock. I froze. My hand hovered over the door handle. I heard the clinking of ice in a glass. William was drinking scotch at 2 in the afternoon. Relax, Mother, William drawled. Eleanor transferred it this morning. £80,000. It is all taken care of. I let out a silent breath. At least they were acknowledging my contribution, or so I thought. But then Margaret laughed. It was a cruel, dry sound. Good, she said. Now that the cheque is cleared, we need to discuss the seating plan. I do not want her sitting at the head table, William. It would be inappropriate. I frowned. Inappropriate? I am his wife. She is a bit rough around the edges, darling, Margaret continued. We have the Duke of Westminster coming. We cannot have Eleanor talking about profit margins and supplier contracts while the Duke is trying to enjoy his venison. It is simply not done. I know, Mother, William replied. And that was the first dagger in my heart. He agreed with her. But what do you want me to do? He asked. She paid for the venison. Oh, William, do stop being so tedious, Margaret snapped. She is merely the financing. Once the bills are paid, she becomes surplus to requirements. Tell her she is not needed. Tell her she doesn't fit in. She is insecure enough to believe it. I leaned against the wall, trembling. Surplus to requirements. Like an old piece of furniture they wanted to throw onto a skip. Besides, Margaret lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper, I have invited Lady Victoria. My stomach dropped. Lady Victoria, the daughter of the Earl of Kent, a woman who had a title, a country estate, and absolutely zero cash flow. Everyone in London knew the Earl was bankrupt, but to Margaret, a bankrupt Earl was still worth more than a self-made female CEO. Victoria is eager to see you again, Margaret purred. She is looking for a husband, someone with means. And thanks to Eleanor, you currently look like a man of very substantial means. There was a pause, a long, heavy silence. I prayed for William to defend me. I prayed for him to say, No, Mother, I love my wife. Then I heard the sound of him sipping his drink. Victoria is charming, William said softly. Does she still have that estate in Scotland? She does, Margaret replied. Imagine the wedding photos, William, a true union of blue bloods, not this shopkeeper nonsense you are currently involved in. We just need to get through tomorrow night. Use Eleanor's money to impress Victoria. Then after the party we can discuss how to uncouple. Uncouple. A polite aristocratic word for discarding a human being. All right, William said. I'll text Eleanor. I'll tell her not to come. It's better this way. She would only embarrass me anyway. I stepped back from the door. I didn't storm in. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the Patek Philippe watch at his head, although I wanted to. Instead, I walked silently back to the hallway. I put on my coat. I left the apartment. I sat in my car and I didn't cry, not a single tear. Because in that moment, the wife died and the CEO took over. They wanted to use my money to audition my replacement. They wanted to play a game of chess with my life. Very well, William. You might have the title and the breeding, but I own the board, and I am about to checkmate you in front of the entire British aristocracy. 2 hours after I heard that phone call, the front door unlocked. It was William. He breezed into the penthouse in a whirlwind of expensive cologne and entitlement. He was in a rush. Of course he was. He had a party to host and a new heiress to woo. I was sitting in the velvet armchair by the window, nursing a glass of sparkling water. I had already changed out of my work clothes. I was wearing a silk dressing gown, perfectly playing the part of the invalid wife he wanted me to be. William stopped when he saw me. For a second, a flicker of guilt crossed his face, but only for a second. He quickly replaced it with a look of exaggerated concern. Eleanor, darling, he said, rushing over to crouch beside my chair. I see you got my text. You look dreadfully pale. Are you feeling all right? I looked at him. His face was the picture of innocent devotion. If I didn't know better, I would have believed him. I feel fine, William, I said, keeping my voice steady. I was just getting ready for the car. The Diamond Jubilee, remember? William sighed, a long, tragic sigh. He took my hand in his. His palms were soft, the palms of a man who has never done a day of hard labour in his life. I know, my love, he said softly, but Mother is worried. She thinks the drive to the Cotswolds will be too much for you, and honestly, the guest list has changed slightly. Changed? I asked, blinking innocently. In what way? He stood up and walked over to the mirror, adjusting his hair. He was avoiding my eyes. Well, it is going to be a very intense political crowd tonight, he lied smoothly. The local MP, the Duke, lots of boring talk about land rights and hunting laws. Mother thought you would be bored to tears. She wants to spare you the agony. I watched him take out his tuxedo from the garment bag. It was a bespoke suit made of Italian wool, £3,000, paid for by Eleanor Design Limited. He put on the jacket and admired his silhouette in the glass. Bored? I repeated. But William, I organised the event. I hired the musicians. I selected the menu. I signed the cheques. Are you sure your mother doesn't need me there, even just to ensure the vendors get paid? William laughed. He turned around and looked at me with a smirk that chilled my blood. Oh, Eleanor, he said, shaking his head as if he were explaining quantum physics to a toddler. You are so sweet, always worrying about the logistics. Listen to me. He walked back to me and kissed me on the forehead. It felt like the kiss of Judas. You are the finance department, darling. Let me and Mother handle the public relations. We don't want you stressing your pretty little head about vendors and invoices tonight. The money is already spent, isn't it? The machine is running. You just stay here. Order a takeaway. Watch some reality TV. You deserve a rest. The finance department. That was all I was to him. A walking bank account that needed to be put in sleep mode when not in use. So, I said, looking up at him, my eyes wide, you are telling me that my only job is to pay the bills and then disappear? He paused, adjusting his silk bow tie. Don't be dramatic, Eleanor. We are doing this for you. Besides, he checked his reflection one last time. The other guests, they're expecting a certain atmosphere. It's just better this way. Trust me. He slipped up. He mentioned her name, Victoria. But he didn't even notice. He was too busy admiring the diamond cufflinks I gave him last Christmas. Right. He grabbed his car keys. I must dash. Traffic out of London is ghastly on Fridays. Don't wait up for me. I'll probably stay at the Manor tonight to help Mother clean up. To help Mother clean up. Another lie. He was staying to seduce an earl's daughter in the house I paid for. William, I called out just as he reached the door. He turned around impatient. What is it now, Eleanor? The car, I said, pointing to the keys in his hand. The Bentley. It's running well. He grinned. Ideally. Best birthday present you ever bought me. Why? Nothing, I smiled. A cold, sharp smile. Just drive carefully. You never know when the road might get bumpy. Bye, darling. And with that the door clicked shut. The silence returned to the penthouse. I sat there for exactly 1 minute. I let the sound of his footsteps fade away down the corridor. He was gone. He was on his way to his party. He was on his way to his mistress. He was on his way to his doom. I stood up and untied my silk dressing gown. Underneath, I was not wearing pyjamas. I was wearing my battle armour, a sharp black business suit. I walked over to my desk and opened my laptop. The screen glowed blue in the dim room, reflecting in my eyes. William told me not to worry about the money. He told me the machine was running. Well, William, I am about to locate the off switch, and I am going to smash it with a sledgehammer. If you are ready to see the moment I cut off his credit cards while he is standing at the bar ordering champagne, comment the number 1 below. The show is about to begin. The heavy oak door clicked shut. I listened to the sound of his footsteps retreating down the corridor, then the faint ding of the lift, and then silence, suffocating, heavy silence. For a moment, the adrenaline that had kept me upright simply vanished. My knees gave way. I sank onto the cold marble floor of the hallway. My beautiful silk dressing gown pooled around me like a puddle of spilt ink. I touched my forehead where he had kissed me. It felt like a burn mark. Why? The question echoed in the empty penthouse. Why wasn't I enough? I gave them everything. I learned their etiquette. I funded their lifestyle. I fixed their crumbling roof and their crumbling reputation. I even bought the very suit he is wearing to betray me tonight. A single tear escaped my eye. It rolled down my cheek, hot and salty. It dropped onto the marble floor. I watched it fall, and I made a promise to myself. That is the last tear I will ever shed for William Winchester. I stayed there for perhaps another minute, breathing in the scent of his expensive cologne that still lingered in the air. And then something shifted inside me. It was a physical sensation, like a steel shutter slamming down over my heart. The sadness evaporated, replacing itself with a cold, clinical clarity. I stood up. I walked to the nearest mirror and wiped my face. The woman staring back at me was no longer the eager-to-please wife. She was Eleanor, the CEO. The woman who negotiates million-pound contracts before breakfast. The woman who fires incompetent employees without blinking. And William? He is no longer my husband. He is a liability. He is a bad investment. He is a malignant tumour that has attached itself to my bank account and is slowly draining the life out of me. And what do you do with a tumour? You don't cry over it. You don't ask it why it hurts you. You cut it out with surgical precision. I turned on my heel and walked into my private study. I locked the door behind me. I walked over to the oil painting of the English countryside hanging on the wall. Margaret always hated this painting. She said it was derivative. I swung the frame aside, revealing the wall safe. I punched in the code. Ironically, the code was our wedding anniversary. The heavy steel door beeped and clicked open. Inside lay the heart of the Winchester family. Not love letters, not sentimental photographs, but files, thick red folders containing the deeds to the Cotswolds estate, the loan agreements, the promissory notes signed by Margaret's shaky hand, and the supplementary credit card contracts. I took them all out and laid them on my mahogany desk. They looked so innocent, just paper and ink. But in my hands, they were weapons of mass destruction. I opened the first file, the bank transfer authorization forms. My signature was at the bottom as the guarantor. I picked up my pen. It was a heavy fountain pen, a gift from my father when I started my business. He told me, "Eleanor, never sign anything you can't walk away from." Well, Dad, I am walking away now. I reached for the landline phone on my desk. The dial tone hummed in my ear like a battle cry. I am not losing a husband tonight. I am gaining my freedom, and it is going to cost them everything. I picked up the secure line on my desk. It rang twice. James Sterling, Private Banking. Good evening, Mrs. Winchester. His voice was smooth, professional, and slightly surprised. James does not usually receive calls from his VIP clients at 7 o'clock on a Friday night. Usually I would be polite. I would ask about his wife and his children. I would make small talk about the weather or the stock market. But tonight there was no time for pleasantries. "James," I said, my voice cutting through the line like a diamond cutter. "Authentication code Alpha 79 Tango. Verification Eleanor." There was a pause, the sound of typing on a keyboard. James shifted instantly from friendly banker to operational mode. Code verified, Mrs. Winchester. We are on a secure recorded line. How can I assist you? I am initiating a code red on my personal portfolio, I said, leaning back in my chair. I need you to execute a series of blocks with immediate effect. Do you have my account details on screen? I do. Good. First, the Centurion supplementary cards held by William Winchester and Margaret Winchester. I want them frozen. Not tomorrow, not in an hour, now. Understood, James replied. May I ask the reason for the block, for the fraud department's records? I looked at the wedding photo on my desk, William smiling that charming, deceptive smile. Suspected unauthorized activity, I said calmly. I have reason to believe the cardholders are attempting to make purchases that exceed their authorized status as family members. Logged as suspected misuse, James said. Cards are frozen. Any attempted transactions from this moment forward will be declined. Excellent. Now let us move to the pending transactions. The Jubilee event file. I opened the spreadsheet on my laptop. My eyes scanned the rows of exorbitant numbers. You will see a pending authorization for £30,000 to the Cotswolds Catering Company. I see it. Revoke it. Mrs. Winchester, James hesitated. That transaction is marked as time-sensitive for an event occurring tonight. If we revoke authorization, then the food stops coming. I finished his sentence. I am aware of the consequences, James. Revoke it. Mark it as cardholder dispute. I did not authorize payment for a party I am banned from attending. Done, James said. His voice was tighter now. He sensed the gravity of the situation. Next, the Royal Vintage Wine Cellar, £5,000 for a case of Chateau Margaux. Revoke it. Contact the merchant and tell them to arrange immediate collection of the unconsumed assets. Revoke wine. Done. The London Symphony Orchestra Quartet. Revoke. The florist. Revoke. The security firm hired to guard the entrance. Revoke. I went down the list methodically. Click, revoke. Click, revoke. With every command, I felt lighter. I wasn't just cancelling payments. I was deleting their ego. I was stripping away the velvet curtains they hid behind. That completes the immediate transaction list, James said, after a minute of furious typing. Is there anything else? One last thing, James, and this is the most important. I took a deep breath. My last will and testament, the draft currently held in your legal vault. Yes, the one naming William Winchester as the sole beneficiary of the Winchester Trust and your majority shares in Eleanor Design. That is the one. I want you to place a temporary freeze on the trust. And I want you to instruct my solicitor to draft a new will first thing Monday morning. Who will be the new beneficiary? The Battersea Dogs and Cats Home, I said. And my sister in Manchester. And Mr. Winchester? Mr. Winchester is to be removed entirely. He gets nothing, not a penny, not a share, not even the cufflinks he is wearing tonight. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. James had managed my family's accounts for 5 years. He knew William. He knew the dynamic. But he was a banker, and in the banking world, the person with the capital is God. And I was God. It is done, Mrs. Winchester, James said softly. The trust is frozen. The cards are blocked. The payments are reversed. You are fully liquid and fully protected. Thank you, James. Mrs. Winchester? Yes? If Mr. Winchester calls, and he likely will when his card is declined, what should I tell him? I smiled, a genuine dark smile. Tell him to call his mother James. Tell him to ask her for a loan. I hear she has a very prestigious family heritage. Surely that must be worth something. I hung up the phone. I sat in the silence of my study. My hands were not shaking. My heart was beating slow and steady. Phase 1 complete. The financial artery has been severed. Now let us see how long the patient can survive before the panic sets in. The banking app on my phone flashed a notification. All cards suspended. I swiped it away. The invisible money was gone. Now it was time to take away the things they could actually touch, the status symbols, the props they used to convince the world they were important. I looked at the clock. 7:15. The guests would be arriving at the manor now. Waiters would be circulating with trays of canapes, and the sommelier would be preparing to decant the red wine. I picked up the phone again and dialed a mobile number. Jean-Luc, head sommelier? He answered on the first ring. Madame Winchester, good evening. We are just about to open the first case of the 82. Jean-Luc sounded breathless. He knew wine. He knew that the 12 bottles of Chateau Lafite Rothschild, 1982, I had sent down were not just beverages. They were history in a bottle. £4,000 a bottle. Stop, I said. My voice was calm, but it carried the weight of an executive order. Do not pull a single cork, Jean-Luc. That wine is no longer for consumption. But madame, the guests, the soup is being served in 10 minutes. Let them drink water, I said, or whatever swill Margaret has in her own cellar. The Lafite is my personal property, Jean-Luc. It was procured under my investment portfolio, not the catering budget. I am formally instructing you to secure all 12 bottles, seal them in their crates, put them in your van, and drive them back to my climate-controlled storage in London immediately. All of them, madame? What should I tell Mr. William? He specifically asked for the 82 to be poured for the Duke. I laughed softly. Tell Mr. William that his taste buds are not sophisticated enough for such a vintage. Tell him the owner has recalled the asset. If he argues, show him the invoice with my signature. If he touches a bottle, call the police and report a theft. Do I make myself clear? Crystal clear, madam. I am packing them now. Merci, Jean-Luc. I hung up. I imagined the look on William's face when he reached for a glass of the world's finest Bordeaux and was handed a glass of tap water instead. It gave me a warm glow inside. But I wasn't finished. There was one more toy, the biggest toy of all. William loved his Bentley Continental GT more than he loved me, probably more than he loved his mother. He spent hours polishing it. He parked it right in front of the entrance wherever he went, so everyone would know he had arrived. He forgot that he didn't buy it. Eleanor Design Limited bought it. It was a company car, perk of the job. And since he was about to lose the job, I scrolled down my contacts to Graham, fleet manager. Graham, it's Eleanor. Boss, everything okay? Not exactly, Graham. I need to initiate an immediate asset recovery. The Bentley Continental, registration Whiskey 1 Lima Lima. Mr. William's car? The company's car, Graham. Mr. William is merely the unauthorised driver. Activate the GPS tracker. Where is it? Let me check. Looks like it's parked at Winchester Manor, Cotswolds. Perfect. Do you have the spare key? I do, in the safe. Grab it, take the recovery truck, drive to the Cotswolds. I want that car on a flatbed and back in the company garage by midnight. On a flatbed, boss? Can't I just ask him for the keys? No, Graham, I said, leaning forward slightly as if he could see my eyes. I don't want a negotiation. I want a repossession. Hook it up, drag it away. If he runs out screaming, which he will, show him the ownership papers. If he tries to stop you, well, you used to be a rugby player, didn't you? Graham chuckled. Understood, boss. I'm leaving now. I put the phone down. I walked over to the window and looked out at the rainy London streets. I felt lighter, so much lighter. I had stripped them of their credit. I had stripped them of their wine, and soon I would strip them of their wheels. They were just children, really, overgrown, spoilt children, playing dress-up in clothes they didn't buy, living in a house they couldn't afford. And like a strict nanny, I had finally decided that playtime was over. The toys were going back in the box, and the nursery lights were about to be turned off. If you're enjoying watching me take back everything I gave them, hit the like button right now, because the next phone call is the one that destroys his career. The car was being recovered, the wine was being seized, the bank accounts were frozen. But there was one final lifeline William was clinging to, his job. Or rather, the title he printed on his business cards, Director of Marketing at Eleanor Design Limited. Salary, £85,000 a year, plus bonuses. It sounds impressive, doesn't it? In reality, William has not marketed a single sofa cushion since 2019. His role was created for one reason only, to give him dignity, to let him pretend to his friends at the club that he was a high-powered executive and not just a husband living off his wife's talent. He spent his days in the office playing online chess and booking long lunches with clients who never bought anything. I tolerated it. I called it the husband tax. But tax season is officially over. I opened my laptop again. I opened a new email draft. 2. Sarah Jenkins, Head of Human Resources. Subject, Immediate Termination of Employment, William Winchester. I typed the words slowly, savouring each keystroke. Dear Sarah, please process the immediate dismissal of William Winchester from his position as Marketing Director, effective 7:30 p.m. today. I paused. I needed a reason. In the UK, firing someone usually requires warnings and tribunals. Unless it is gross misconduct. I typed again. Reason for dismissal, gross misconduct, theft of company assets, unauthorized use of company funds for personal entertainment, reputational damage. That should do it. Using the company credit card to fund a private party without authorization is technically fraud. And driving a company car to a mistress's potential wedding venue, that is definitely reputational damage. Now for the perks, the things that actually matter to a man like William. Please ensure the following actions are taken immediately. 1. Remove him from the company Bupa private health insurance scheme. He can rely on the NHS from tomorrow morning. 2. Cancel the corporate membership at the Royal Surrey Golf Club. 3. Revoke his access pass to the London office. If he attempts to enter, security is to escort him off the premises. 4. Wipe his company iPhone remotely. I do not want him keeping any contacts. I read it back. It was brutal. It was a career death sentence. With gross misconduct on his reference, he would never work in the city again. He would be toxic, radioactive. And the best part? He was currently standing in a room full of people boasting about his success. He was probably telling Lady Victoria about his big projects and his executive decisions. He had no idea that at this precise moment he was unemployed. He was a man with no income, no insurance, and no future. I moved the cursor to the send button. My finger hovered over the trackpad. I thought about the 5 years I spent building him up. I thought about the lies he told his mother earlier today. She is surplus to requirements. No, William, you are the one who is redundant. Click. The email swooshed away. Sent. Sarah in HR is efficient. She works late on Fridays. By the time William wakes up tomorrow morning, his P45 will be in the post. I closed the laptop. The silence in the room felt different now. It wasn't empty, it was clean. I had scrubbed the stain out of my life. I stood up and walked to the drinks cabinet. I poured myself a glass of the vintage red wine that Jean-Luc was currently rescuing from the party. I took a sip. It tasted like victory. But the night was not over yet. The financial and professional execution was complete. Now it was time for the public humiliation. The guests were arriving at the castle. The stage was set, and the curtain was about to rise on the greatest tragedy the Cotswolds had ever seen. If you want to be a fly on the wall when William's credit card gets declined in front of the Duke, hit the like button. We are going to the party. While I sat in London sipping my wine, the scene at Winchester Manor was unfolding exactly as I had paid for it to unfold. Imagine the scene, if you will. It is a crisp evening in the Cotswolds. The gravel driveway is filled with Range Rovers and vintage Jaguars. The honey-coloured stone of the manor house is bathed in warm golden floodlights. Inside the great hall, the air smells of expensive perfume and old money. And there, standing at the bottom of the grand staircase, is Margaret, my mother-in-law. Tonight she believes she is the Queen of England. She is wearing an emerald green silk gown. I know it well. I bought it for her in Harrods 3 weeks ago. She told her friends it was a family heirloom altered to fit. She is greeting guests with that high-pitched laugh she reserves for people with titles. "Oh, Lord Davenport, so glad you could make it. Lady Mary, you look ravishing." She is in her element. She is floating on a cloud of vanity, completely unaware that the cloud is made of vapour, and I have just turned off the humidifier. The string quartet from the Royal College of Music is playing Vivaldi in the corner. Waiters are circulating with silver trays of lobster canapés. Every bite costs £5. Margaret snatches a glass of champagne from a passing tray. She taps a spoon against the glass. The room falls silent. All eyes are on her, just the way she likes it. "My dear friends," she begins, her voice trembling with theatrical emotion. "Thank you for coming to celebrate my Diamond Jubilee. It is so wonderful to be surrounded by true friends and family, by people who understand the value of tradition and heritage." The guests applaud politely. "I look around this room," she continues, "and I see the legacy of the Winchester family. We have weathered many storms, but we are still standing, stronger than ever." She raises her glass. "To the Winchester legacy." "To the legacy," the room echoes. I wonder if she choked on the irony. The only legacy left in that room is the debt I cleared and the roof I patched. And where is my loving husband during this touching speech? Is he missing his wife? Is he texting me to see if I am feeling better? Of course not. William is standing by the fireplace, one arm resting casually on the mantelpiece, posing like a model in a Ralph Lauren catalogue. And he is not alone. Standing next to him is Lady Victoria. She is tall, thin, and looks like she smells of horses and desperation. She is wearing a dress that was fashionable 10 years ago, because that was the last time her father could afford to buy her new clothes. I can see them in my mind's eye, as clearly as if I were watching a security feed. William leans in close to her, too close. He whispers something in her ear, and she giggles, covering her mouth with a fan. A fan? Who uses a fan in the 21st century? People who are trying too hard, that is who. A guest approaches them. It is the local vicar. "William, my boy," the vicar beams. "Wonderful party. But where is your lovely wife? Where is Eleanor?" This is the moment. The rehearsal is over. It is showtime. William puts on a sad face. It is a practised expression, furrowed brow, slightly downturned lips. "Oh, father," William sighs dramatically, loud enough for Victoria to hear. "It is dreadful. Poor Eleanor has come down with a terrible flu. She is absolutely bedridden in London." "Oh dear," the vicar says. "I hope it isn't serious." "We urged her to stay home," Margaret chips in, gliding over to join the circle of lies. "She was devastated, of course. She so wanted to be here to see all of you high-born people. But you know, Eleanor, she is quite frail. Her constitution isn't robust like ours." "Frail? I run a company of 200 people, Margaret. I lift weights at the gym 3 times a week. The only thing frail about me was my judgment in marrying your son." "Such a shame," Lady Victoria says, batting her eyelashes at William. "But how lucky for us that you are here, William, and solo. You can give me the full tour of the estate. I remember playing in the rose garden when we were children." William smiles, that charming predatory smile. "It would be my honour, Victoria," he says, offering her his arm. "The rose garden is particularly beautiful under the moonlight, and thanks to the family fortune, we have restored it to its former glory." He is taking credit for my gardeners. He is taking credit for my roses. He is taking credit for my money. They link arms and walk away from the group, heading towards the French doors that lead to the terrace. They think they are walking into a romantic tryst. They think the night belongs to them. They have no idea that the man standing by the door isn't a waiter. It is Mr. Thompson, the venue manager, and he is not holding a tray of drinks. He is holding a clipboard, and behind him, standing in the shadows of the marquee, are 2 men in high visibility jackets, Graham and his recovery team. They are watching the Bentley parked proudly on the gravel. They are waiting for the signal. Inside the great hall, the sommelier Jean-Luc is slowly putting the cork back into a bottle of Chateau Lafite. He checks his watch. He looks at Margaret, who is laughing at her own joke. The trap is set. The players are in position. Enjoy your champagne, Margaret. Savour that lobster, William, because it is the last taste of luxury you will ever have. The clock is ticking, and midnight is coming early for Cinderella. The lobster canapes had been devoured. The first round of champagne had been drunk. The atmosphere in the great hall was electric. William was holding court near the grand piano, making Lady Victoria laugh with stories that I suspect he stole from a movie. He looked every inch the lord of the manor. His tuxedo fit perfectly. His smile was dazzling. He was standing on top of the world. And then the head chef walked out of the kitchen, Chef Henri, a serious man who takes his money as seriously as his sauces. He scanned the room and made a beeline for William. I imagine William felt a surge of pride. He probably thought the chef was coming to compliment him on the menu selection. "Mr. Winchester," Chef Henri said, bowing slightly but keeping his back stiff. "1,000 apologies for the interruption." "Not at all, Henri," William beamed, waving a hand magnanimously. "The lobster is divine, truly." "Thank you, sir," Henri said. "However, there is a small administrative matter. The agency staff. They require the gratuity and the overtime payment to be settled before the main course is served. It is standard policy for weekend events." "Ah, yes, of course," William laughed. "Administrative nonsense. How much is it?" £2,000, sir." "Trifling," William said. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his wallet. It was a Mont Blanc leather wallet, another gift from me. He extracted the sleek black Centurion card, the card that opens doors, the card that screams unlimited power. "Put it on this, Henri," William said, handing it over with a flourish. And add a bottle of brandy for yourself." Henri produced a portable card terminal from his apron. He inserted the card. William tapped in the PIN code. 1985. His birth year, so predictable. The machine processed, connecting, authorizing, beep, a harsh, flat sound. "Declined," Henri said, reading the screen. His voice lost a fraction of its warmth. William frowned. "That is impossible. It is a black card, Henri. It doesn't get declined. Try it again. It must be the signal in this old house." Henri sighed, but obliged. He pushed the card in again. William typed the code again, harder this time. "Beep." "Declined," Henri repeated. "It says contact issuer." A few guests nearby stopped talking. The silence began to ripple outward from William, like a stone dropped in a pond. "Ridiculous," William muttered. A sheen of sweat appeared on his upper lip. "Bank computers, always glitching on Fridays. Here." He pulled out a second card, the Platinum Visa. "Use this one." Henri took it. Insert, PIN, wait. Beep. "Declined, sir." Now Lady Victoria was watching. She had stopped fanning herself. Her eyes darted from the card terminal to William's sweating face. "Is everything all right, William?" she asked. Her voice was sweet, but there was an edge to it, the edge of a woman who smells poverty. "Fine, absolutely fine." William snapped his voice too loud. "Just banking errors. Eleanor must have changed the security settings or something." He was digging through his wallet now. His hands were shaking. He pulled out a third card, a debit card, the joint household account, the one we used for groceries. "This one," William said, shoving it at Henri. "This one definitely works." Henri looked at the debit card with a sneer. It was beneath him, but he swiped it anyway. Beep. "Transaction not authorized," Henri said loudly. "Mr. Winchester, do you have another means of payment? Cash, perhaps?" "Cash?" William spluttered. "Who carries £2,000 in cash?" "Then I am afraid we have a problem," Henri said. "My staff do not work for free. If the payment is not settled in 10 minutes, the service stops." The whispers started then. They started as a low hum, but quickly grew into a roar in William's ears. "Did you hear that? His cards are declined. All of them. How embarrassing. I thought they were wealthy. Maybe the rumours are true." William looked around. The admiration in the room had vanished, replaced by curiosity, by pity, and by judgment. He looked at his mother Margaret across the room. She had frozen mid-laugh, her glass of champagne halfway to her mouth. She saw the look on his face. She saw the card terminal in the chef's hand, and she knew. The house of cards had just felt its first breeze. And I? Sitting in my London apartment, I poured another glass of wine. "Oh, William, you wanted to be the centre of attention. Well, congratulations. Everyone is looking at you now." If you want to see what happens when the venue manager walks in with the eviction notice, comment the number 2 right now. The main course is about to be served cold. The whispers regarding the declined credit cards were still circulating like a poison gas when the double doors to the kitchen swung open. Jean-Luc, the head sommelier, marched out. He was followed by a phalanx of 4 waiters. They were not carrying silver trays. They were carrying empty wooden crates. William, seeing them approach, let out a sigh of relief. He clearly thought this was the cavalry arriving to save him. He thought Jean-Luc was bringing the Chateau Lafite 1982 to smooth over the awkwardness with the chef. "Ah, finally," William announced, his voice booming with forced cheerfulness. "Ladies and gentlemen, please forgive the technical hitch with the hors d'oeuvre, but to make amends, we are now opening a wine so rare that even the king would be envious." He turned to Lady Victoria. "You must try this, Victoria. My wife, I acquired it specifically for your palate." Jean-Luc stopped at the head table. He did not uncork the bottle in his hand. Instead, he placed the empty crate on the table with a heavy thud. William frowned. "Jean-Luc, the glasses are empty. Pour." Jean-Luc looked William dead in the eye. "I am afraid there will be no pouring tonight, sir." "What?" William laughed nervously. "Don't be absurd, man. The Duke is waiting." Jean-Luc signalled to his waiters. With military precision, they began to move around the tables. But they were not filling glasses. They were taking them away. One waiter reached over Lady Victoria's shoulder and removed her crystal goblet. Another waiter picked up the unopened bottles of white wine from the ice buckets. "What on earth are you doing?" Margaret shrieked, standing up. "That is our wine. Put it back." "It is not your wine, madame," Jean-Luc said calmly, his voice carrying across the silent room. "This inventory belongs to the private collection of Mrs. Eleanor Winchester." "I am her husband," William shouted. "What is hers is mine." "Not according to the recall notice I received 10 minutes ago," Jean-Luc replied, holding up his phone. "The owner of the asset has formally requested an immediate seal and return." She cited unauthorized consumption by non-paying parties as the reason. Non-paying parties. The phrase hung in the air like a bad smell. "This is theft," William spluttered, grabbing onto a bottle of the Lafitte. "I forbid you to take this." Jean-Luc did not wrestle him. He simply beckoned to the security guard standing by the door. "Sir," Jean-Luc said, "if you do not release the bottle, I am instructed to press charges for criminal damage to property valued at £4,000. Do you wish to be arrested in front of the Duke?" William's hand trembled. He looked at the bottle. He looked at the Duke, who was watching the scene with a mixture of horror and fascination. He looked at Victoria, who was shrinking away from him as if he were contagious. Slowly, painfully, William let go of the bottle. Jean-Luc placed it in the crate. "Merci," he said coldly. The waiters finished their sweep. The tables were bare, no wine, no water, just empty white tablecloths and humiliated guests. But Eleanor was not done yet. Just as the sommelier marched out with the reclaimed treasure, the room suddenly changed. The warm golden glow that bathed the great hall flickered. Once, twice, and then dim. The massive crystal chandeliers overhead dropped from a brilliant radiance to a dull, muddy orange gloom. The mood lighting around the walls cut out completely, plunging the corners of the room into darkness. "A fuse!" Margaret cried out desperately. "It is just a fuse. Someone call the caretaker." "It is not a fuse, madame," a voice came from the back of the room. It was the lighting technician standing by his control board. He looked apologetic but firm. "The lighting rig is on a smart meter system, madame," he explained. "The 50% deposit required to keep the Royal Ambience package active was due at 8 o'clock. The payment source, Mrs. Winchester's account, has cancelled the authorization." "So turn it back on," Margaret commanded. "I can't," the technician shrugged. "Without the deposit, the system automatically reverts to emergency safety lighting mode. It's factory settings. Enough to see the exit, but not enough for a party." Emergency safety lighting. How fitting. The glamorous ballroom now looked like a dingy waiting room. The harsh, low light revealed the cracks in the plaster that the expensive lighting had hidden. It revealed the dust on the velvet curtains, and most cruelly of all, it revealed the true age of Margaret's face, stripping away the flattering glow and leaving her looking old, tired and defeated. In the semi-darkness, the guests began to whisper louder. "No food, no wine. And now we are sitting in the dark. This is a farce." Lady Victoria stood up. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor. "William," she said, her voice cold as ice, "I think I have seen enough of the estate. My driver is outside." "Victoria, wait," William pleaded, reaching for her hand. "It's just a misunderstanding. Eleanor she is having a breakdown. She is confused." "The only thing Eleanor seems confused about," Victoria sneered, pulling her hand away, "is why she supported a fraud like you for so long. Good night, William. Do not call me." She walked out, and like a dam breaking, other guests began to stand up. I watched the GPS tracker on my laptop screen. I saw the little dots representing the guests' cars starting to move away from the manor, one by one, fleeing the sinking ship. It was beautiful. But there was one final act remaining, the eviction. Because a party without guests is just a tragedy. But a party without a house, that is a comedy. If you want to see the moment the police arrive to escort them off the property, comment the number 3. The finale is here. The driveway was now a sea of red taillights as the cream of British society queued to escape the disaster zone. But just as the last Range Rover was turning out onto the main road, a new set of lights appeared. Blue lights, flashing rhythmically against the stone walls of the manor. Police. William, standing in the dimly lit hall, looked out of the window and gasped. For a fleeting moment, hope flickered in his eyes. "The police!" he shouted to the dwindling crowd. "Thank God! Someone must have reported the theft of the wine. They are here to arrest the sommelier." He straightened his bow tie. He marched towards the front door, ready to play the victim one last time. He threw the doors open dramatically. "Officers," William bellowed, "I am so glad you're here. I want to report a robbery." 2 police officers stepped out of a patrol car, but they did not walk towards William. They stood back, arms crossed, leaning against their vehicle. They were merely the escort. The real threat stepped out from behind them. It was Graham, my fleet manager. A man who is 6 feet 4 inches of pure muscle and wears a high-visibility jacket like a suit of armour. Graham walked up the stone steps. He didn't look at William's outstretched hand. He looked at the keys dangling in William's other hand. "Mr. Winchester," Graham said. His voice was deep and carried across the gravel driveway where the remaining guests were stalling their cars to watch the show. "Who are you?" William demanded, stepping back. "Where is the sommelier?" "I am not here for the wine, mate," Graham said, dropping the formalities. "I am here for the car, the Bentley Continental, registration Whiskey 1 Lima Lima." "The car?" William laughed, a hysterical, high-pitched sound. "This is a private party. Get off my land." "It's not your land, William," Graham said, holding up a clipboard. "And it's definitely not your car. I have a repossession order signed by the legal owner, Eleanor Design Limited. You are in possession of company property without authorization. Hand over the keys, now." William clutched the keys to his chest like a child holding a teddy bear. "You can't take it. My wife gave it to me." "Your wife is my boss," Graham replied, stepping closer. "And she says the perks package has been revoked. Now I can take the keys from your hand, or the officers behind me can arrest you for taking without owner's consent. Your choice. But do hurry up. The tow truck is blocking the exit, and the Duchess wants to go home." William looked at the police officers. They nodded, confirming the threat. He looked at the guests. Lady Victoria was leaning out of her car window, filming the scene on her phone, filming him. Defeated, William dropped the keys into Graham's massive palm. "Cheers," Graham said. He turned and signalled to the truck waiting in the shadows. Beep, beep, beep. The piercing sound of a reversing truck cut through the night air. Graham climbed into the Bentley. He didn't treat it gently. He revved the engine hard, a roar that William used to think was his own lion's roar, and drove it unceremoniously onto the flatbed ramp. As the car was hoisted into the air, dangling like a caught fish, Margaret appeared at the door. She was pale, trembling, holding onto the doorframe for support. She watched the symbol of her son's success being strapped down with yellow chains. "William," she whispered, "what are they doing?" But before he could answer, Mr. Thompson, the venue manager, stepped forward. He looked furious. "Mrs. Winchester," Thompson said, "since the lighting rig deposit was cancelled, I have just checked the status of the venue hire fee." Margaret looked at him with wide, terrified eyes. It is paid. Eleanor paid it." "She revoked the payment guarantee," Thompson spat. "The transaction has been voided, which means, strictly speaking, you and your son have been trespassing on this property since 6 o'clock this evening." "Trespassing?" Margaret gasped, clutching her pearls. "We are the Winchesters." "I don't care if you are the Windsors," Thompson said. "You have no contract, no insurance, and no money. You need to vacate the premises immediately, or I will ask the officers to remove you for unlawful occupation." This was it, the final blow. Margaret looked out at the driveway. The last few guests were driving away slowly. But they weren't looking away. They were laughing. She could see their silhouettes in the car windows, heads thrown back, shoulders shaking. They weren't laughing with her. They were laughing at her. The Queen of the Cotswolds had been dethroned, stripped naked, and locked out of her own castle. The reality hit her like a physical punch. Her knees buckled, her eyes rolled back, and this time there was no acting involved. Margaret crumpled to the ground in a heap of emerald green silk. "Mother!" William screamed, rushing to her side. He looked up at the circle of people looking down at him. Graham on the truck, the police officers, the angry venue manager, and in the distance the disappearing tail lights of the society he so desperately wanted to join. He was kneeling in the dirt, holding his unconscious mother in the dark. No car, no money, no dignity. And somewhere in London I closed my laptop. The show was over. The curtain had fallen. And the house lights, the emergency ones at least, were the only things left shining on the wreckage of William Winchester's life. If you think they deserve to walk home in the rain, comment the number 4, because the long walk to redemption, or at least to the nearest bus stop, starts now. The Cotswolds are beautiful in the sunlight, but at 11 o'clock at night, in a torrential downpour, standing on the side of a country road without a vehicle, it is a special kind of hell. William and Margaret stood by the gates of the manor. The venue manager had locked them out. The police had left. The Bentley was halfway back to London on the back of Graham's truck. They were wet, sodden to the bone. Margaret's emerald silk dress was clinging to her frame like seaweed. William's £3,000 tuxedo was ruined mud splattered up to the knees. And the silence between them was heavier than the rain. Finally, a car pulled up. It was not a chauffeur-driven Mercedes. It was a local minicab, a battered Toyota Prius that smelled faintly of stale tobacco and Magic Tree air freshener. "London?" the driver asked, winding down the window. He looked at their muddy clothes with suspicion. "Cash up front, mate. It's a long drive." William patted his pockets. His wallet was full of useless plastic, frozen, declined, void. He pulled out a crumpled wad of notes, the emergency cash he kept in his jacket. "I have £80, William stammered. "That'll get you to the outskirts," the driver shrugged. "Get in." They squeezed into the back seat. Margaret huddled against the window, shivering. Her hair, once a sculpted helmet of hairspray, was now a flat, dripping mess. For the first 10 miles, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the rhythmic thumping of the windscreen wipers and the relentless ticking of the taximeter. Then the explosion happened. "This is your fault," Margaret hissed. Her voice was low and venomous. "My fault?" William turned to her, incredulous. "You couldn't control her," Margaret spat. "You let that common little shopkeeper humiliate us. You are a man, William. You were supposed to be the head of the household. Instead, you let her castrate you publicly." "Control her?" William laughed, a jagged, hysterical sound. "You were the one who told me to ignore her. You were the one who called her surplus to requirements. I wanted to invite her mother. I knew we needed her money, but no, you had to have your precious Lady Victoria there." "Don't you dare blame me," Margaret shrieked. "I was trying to secure a future for this family, a future with dignity, not living off the charity of a woman who doesn't know which fork to use for the fish course." "Well, that woman just repossessed your dignity," William shouted back. "Look at us, Mother. We are in a dirty cab, counting pennies like beggars. Lady Victoria filmed the whole thing. Do you think she will ever speak to me again? Do you think any of them will?" "If you had been smarter," Margaret continued, ignoring his outburst, "you would have secured the assets in your name years ago. But you were lazy, William, lazy and complacent." "Lazy?" William turned red. "I spent 5 years playing the loving husband. I listened to her boring stories about fabric swatches. I slept in the same bed as her. I did everything you told me to do." "And you failed," Margaret screamed. "You failed, and now look at me, 60 years old and freezing to death in a Toyota because my son is incompetent." The driver looked in the rearview mirror. "Oi, keep it down back there or you can walk." The threat silenced them instantly. They knew he meant it, and they knew they had nowhere else to go. They slumped back into their respective corners. The anger was still there, simmering like acid, but fear was stronger. William watched the taximeter numbers climb. £40, £50, £60. He gripped the door handle. He realised with a sick feeling in his stomach that they wouldn't even make it to Mayfair. They would be dumped on a street corner, somewhere in the suburbs, in the rain. And when they finally trudged back to the penthouse, what then? William closed his eyes. He remembered Eleanor's face when he left the apartment earlier that evening. He remembered her question. "The car is running well?" She knew. She knew even then, and as the rain lashed against the cheap glass of the taxi window, William Winchester finally understood the true cost of betraying a woman who holds the purse strings. It costs you everything. The taxi driver dumped them at the corner of Oxford Street. The £80 had run out. So the final leg of the Winchester journey was a humiliating 20-minute walk through the rain to the exclusive apartment building in Mayfair. They arrived at the glass doors shortly after 1 in the morning. They looked like refugees from a shipwreck. William's tuxedo was sodden. Margaret was barefoot, holding her ruined designer heels in her hand. They approached the entrance. William reached for his security fob attached to his house keys. He pressed it against the sensor. Red light. Beep. Access denied. He pressed it again frantically. Red light. Red light. "It's the rain," William muttered, wiping the fob on his wet sleeve. "It's just wet." Inside the brightly lit foyer, the night porter looked up from his desk. It was Arthur, a man who had worked in the building for 30 years. He saw them. He did not rush to open the door. Instead, he walked slowly, purposefully towards the glass. He unlocked the manual latch and opened the door just a crack. "Mr. Winchester," Arthur said. His tone was polite but firm, the tone one uses with a door-to-door salesman. "I am afraid I cannot permit entry." "Arthur, don't be an idiot," William snapped, pushing against the door. "It's me. I live here. My key isn't working." Arthur held the door firm. "Your key has been deactivated, sir, by instruction of the leaseholder, Mrs. Eleanor Winchester." "She can't do that," Margaret screeched from behind William. "This is our home." "Actually, madam," Arthur corrected, "the lease is in Mrs. Winchester's maiden name, and she has left instructions that you are no longer residents." William felt the blood drain from his face. "This is illegal, Arthur. Let me up. I need to speak to my wife." "I cannot do that, sir. However," Arthur gestured to the corner of the lobby. There, neatly stacked like a sculpture of failure, were 4 Louis Vuitton suitcases and 3 cardboard boxes. "Mrs. Winchester requested that I bring these down for you. She said it is everything you own. She was very specific, sir. She said—" Arthur paused, checking his notebook. "She said, the rest of the furniture stays. He only paid for his clothes." William looked at the pile. His life, reduced to 4 bags and a few boxes in a hotel lobby. Trembling with rage, William pulled out his phone. It had 4% battery left. He dialed Eleanor. It rang. Once. Twice. Then the line clicked open. "Hello?" Her voice was calm, serene. In the background he could hear jazz music playing softly. It sounded warm in there. "Eleanor!" William screamed into the phone. "Open this door! Open it right now! Arthur won't let us in!" "Oh, hello, William," Eleanor said. She didn't sound angry. She sounded like she was speaking to a delivery driver who had arrived at an inconvenient time. "I believe Arthur is just doing his job. Non-residents aren't allowed past the foyer after midnight. Security policy, you know." "Non-residents?" William choked. "I am your husband. I have rights. You can't just lock me out in the rain." "Actually, I can," Eleanor replied, taking a sip of something. He could hear the ice clink. "I changed the locks and the alarm codes an hour ago. And since the apartment was bought with my dividends before we were married, well, you are legally just a guest who has overstayed his welcome." "Where am I supposed to go?" William shouted. Tears were mixing with the rain on his face. "Mother is freezing. We have no money. The taxi dumped us on the street." "Is that so?" Eleanor mused. "That sounds dreadfully uncomfortable. Perhaps you should call Lady Victoria. I hear her estate is very spacious, although I suspect she might be busy deleting your number right now." "Eleanor, please," William's voice cracked. He switched from anger to begging in a heartbeat. "Baby, please, just let us in for tonight. We can talk about this. I'll explain everything. Just open the door." There was a silence on the line. For a second, William thought he had won. He thought he had found the crack in her armour. "William?" Eleanor asked softly. Yes, darling, I'm here." "Do you remember the text you sent me? Mother feels you simply do not fit in." "I didn't mean it. It was just—" "Well," Eleanor interrupted, her voice hardening into steel, "I have looked at my life, William, and I have realised that you and your mother simply do not fit in. You don't fit in my house, you don't fit in my bank account, and you certainly don't fit in my future." "Eleanor, your bags are in the lobby. I packed them myself. I even included your golf clubs, although I cancelled the membership, so I'm not sure where you'll use them." "Eleanor, don't hang up." "Goodbye, William. Try not to drip on the lobby floor. Arthur just polished it." Click. The line went dead. William stared at the phone. The screen went black, battery dead. He looked up. Arthur was standing there watching him. "Shall I call a cab for you, sir?" Arthur asked, although payment might be an issue. William turned to his mother. Margaret was sitting on one of the suitcases, holding her head in her hands, rocking back and forth. They were in the most expensive building in London, and they were homeless. The glass door between them and the warmth of the lobby reflected their image. Two wet, miserable figures standing in the cold, locked out of paradise. And the only key was lying on a coffee table upstairs next to a glass of vintage red wine that neither of them would ever taste again. Monday morning broke over London with a sky the colour of a bruised plum. Inside the glass-walled offices of Blackwood and Sterling LLP on the 42nd floor of the Shard, the atmosphere was sterile and cold. William and Margaret sat on one side of the long mahogany conference table. They looked like ghosts of their former selves. William was wearing an old suit that he had clearly tried to press himself in a hotel room. Margaret was wearing a coat that looked expensive from a distance, but up close you could see the frayed hem. They were nervous. They kept looking at the door, expecting Eleanor to walk in. They had rehearsed their speeches. William was going to play the heartbroken husband. Margaret was going to play the frail old woman who just wanted peace. But the door opened and Eleanor did not walk in. Instead, a man in a sharp charcoal suit entered. He carried a leather briefcase and an air of absolute authority. This was Mr. Blackwood, London's most ruthless divorce solicitor. He sat down without shaking hands. He placed a single thick file on the table. "Where is my wife?" William asked, his voice cracking slightly. "We were told to meet her here." "My client has no desire to be in the same postcode as you, Mr. Winchester," Blackwood said. His voice was smooth and indifferent, like polished granite. "I'm here to convey her terms." "Terms?" Margaret scoffed, trying to summon her old arrogance. "We are not here to accept terms. We are here to negotiate. My son has rights. He was a director in her company. He contributed to her success. We expect a fair settlement, half the assets, and the penthouse." Blackwood looked at Margaret over the rim of his spectacles. It was a look of profound pity. "Mrs. Winchester," he said softly, "I think you have misunderstood the gravity of your situation. You are not here to negotiate a divorce settlement. You are here to negotiate your freedom." "What are you talking about?" William demanded. "It's a marriage breakdown, not a criminal trial." "Is it?" Blackwood opened the file. He slid a photograph across the table. It was a grainy image, but clearly identifiable. William and Lady Victoria, in a hotel room, dated 3 months ago. "Adultery," Blackwood stated, "clear and undeniable. That invalidates any claim to spousal support under the prenuptial agreement clause 4B. But honestly, William, that is the least of your worries." He slid another document across, a spreadsheet with highlighted rows. "This is a forensic accounting report of your corporate spending over the last 3 years." William went pale. He recognized the numbers. "Use of the company credit card for non-business-related expenses," Blackwood read from the list. 5-star holidays in the Maldives, marked as client research. Jewellery purchases from Tiffany's, marked as office supplies. And my personal favourite, a £20,000 transfer to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. That was a bonus," William stammered. "Eleanor said I could have a bonus." "There is no written authorisation for any of these transactions," Blackwood replied. "In the eyes of the law, this is not a bonus. It is embezzlement. It is corporate theft. And the total amount siphoned from Eleanor Design Limited stands at £250,000. Margaret gasped. She turned to her son. "William, 200,000. Where is that money?" William couldn't answer. He couldn't tell her he had gambled it on bad stocks and worse horses, trying to look rich. "We have drafted a criminal complaint," Blackwood continued, tapping a heavy document. "Fraud, embezzlement, misappropriation of funds." If we file this with the Metropolitan Police this afternoon, you will be arrested before dinner. The sentence for this scale of white-collar crime is typically 3 to 5 years in prison. The room fell silent. The only sound was the air conditioning humming. Prison. The word hung in the air, suffocating them. William Winchester, the man who thought he was a prince, was looking at a future in a cell. Margaret began to weep. Not fake tears this time, real, terrified tears. "Please," she sobbed, grabbing Blackwood's arm. "He is my only son. He can't go to prison. He wouldn't survive. Please. Eleanor loved him once. She wouldn't do this." "Eleanor is a businesswoman," Blackwood said, pulling his arm away. "And she is recovering a loss. However, she is willing to offer a deal." "Anything," William whispered. "I'll do anything." Blackwood pushed a document towards him. "This is a deed of surrender. By signing this, you admit to the adultery. You waive all rights to any marital assets. You resign from the company with immediate effect, acknowledging your misconduct. And you agree to repay the stolen funds by liquidating any remaining personal assets you have, including," Blackwood checked his notes, "the small cottage in East Point that belongs to your mother." "My house?" Margaret screamed. "You want my house? It's all I have left." "It is the only asset with enough equity to cover a fraction of what William stole," Blackwood said coldly. "So here is the choice. Option A. William goes to prison and we seize the house anyway through the courts. Option B. You sign the papers. You give us the house voluntarily and Eleanor agrees not to file criminal charges. William walks away free, penniless but free." William looked at his mother. She was looking back at him with a mixture of hatred and despair. She realized then that her precious son, her golden boy, had not only destroyed his own life, but hers as well. "Sign it," Margaret whispered, her voice shaking. "Sign it, you idiot, before they call the police." William picked up the pen. His hand shook so badly he could barely hold it. He looked at the paper. It was the end of the Winchester legacy, the end of the dream. He signed. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Blackwood took the papers back instantly. He checked the signature. "Wise choice," the lawyer said, closing the file. "You have 24 hours to vacate the East Point property. The keys are to be delivered to this office by noon tomorrow." "But where will we live?" William asked, tears streaming down his face. "That," Blackwood said, standing up and buttoning his jacket, "is no longer Mrs. Winchester's concern. Good day." He walked to the door and held it open. It was a dismissal. William and Margaret stood up. They walked out of the glass office into the grey London morning. They had entered hoping for a payout. They left with nothing but the clothes on their backs and a debt that had cost them their last sanctuary. As the lift doors closed on their miserable faces, Mr. Blackwood picked up his phone and dialed a number. "Mrs. Winchester?" "It is done." They signed. "Yes, everything. You are completely free." If you want to see where they end up 1 year later, comment the number 5. The finale awaits. The sun over Lake Como hits the water differently than it does in London. Here the light is golden, it is warm, and most importantly, it is honest. I am sitting on the terrace of my new villa. I bought it 6 months ago. Not with a loan, not with a mortgage, but with the dividends from the most successful year in the history of Eleanor design. On the table in front of me is a glass of Pinot Grigio and a plate of olives. There are no invoices to sign. There are no egos to massage. There is just the sound of the lake lapping against the shore and the distant hum of a speedboat. A man walks onto the terrace. His name is Alessandro. He is an architect. He has his own money. He pours himself a glass of wine and kisses my cheek. He doesn't ask me to buy him a car. He doesn't ask me to impress his mother. He just asks me if I am happy. And for the first time in 5 years, I can answer that question truthfully. Yes, I am free. Meanwhile, 1,000 miles away under the grey drizzle of a Croydon sky, the reality is somewhat different. William Winchester is waking up. Not in a penthouse, not in a manor, but in a one-bedroom bedsit above a kebab shop. The wallpaper is peeling, the heating is broken, and the smell of grease permeates everything. He puts on a cheap polyester suit. It is tight around the waist because a diet of instant noodles and cheap lager has taken its toll. He checks his reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror. The Prince of the Cotswolds is gone. Replacing him is a tired 35-year-old man with thinning hair and a mountain of county court judgments. He has a bus to catch. He works in a call centre now, selling extended warranties for washing machines. "Good morning, is this the homeowner?" he will say 100 times today, and 100 times people will hang up on him. Just like society hung up on him a year ago. And Margaret? She sits in the corner of the cramped room, wrapped in a blanket, because they cannot afford to turn on the radiator. She is watching a daytime television show about wealthy aristocrats. She critiques their outfits to the empty room. "That colour is all wrong," she mutters. "No breeding." She clings to her snobbery like a life raft, but she is drowning in an ocean of irrelevance. She has no friends. The high society ladies she tried so hard to impress dropped her the moment the scandal broke. Now she is just an angry old woman, eating beans on toast on a plastic tray, dreaming of a castle she never really owned. I take a sip of my wine. I don't hate them anymore. Hate takes energy, and I have better things to do with my energy. I simply do not think of them. They are ghosts, fading memories of a bad dream that I finally woke up from. People say that revenge is a dish best served cold. I disagree. Revenge is not about serving anything to your enemies. It is about serving yourself. It is about reclaiming your dignity. It is about realizing that your value does not decrease based on someone else's inability to see its worth. I look out at the beautiful Italian sunset. I raise my glass to the old Eleanor, the girl who tried so hard to fit in. I thank her for surviving, and then I let her go. Because the woman sitting here today, she doesn't need a castle to be a queen. She just needed to evict the jesters. This is Eleanor Winchester signing off. And if you learned one thing from my story, let it be this. Never set yourself on fire to keep others warm, especially if they are the ones holding the match.